at digital sales and where it fits um, in the profession, it really is a combination of historically work inside in a sales center where you're lots of interaction, lots of mentoring, lots of coaching, lots of teamwork. Um, and you're using all of your tools. I mean, we started off basically, it wasn't digital, it was phone, and we've just progressed over the years. Um, so it's also been the place where a lot of people start their career in sales prior to going outside. I think that's also transitioned with work from home. We're still digital sales, but we operate a lot like what our counterparts in account executive roles that are in the field are doing currently. Yeah, I think when you look at, especially in the prospecting realm, the attitude or the strategy was always you hire a bunch of entry level salespeople who were either trying to get into sales or they were trying to get into your company. A lot of the time you did them on contract basis, right? They would come in on 90-day contracts, kind of a buy and try. Um, and then you would supply them with lists, supply them with leads, have them answer the phone, um, and you played the ratio game, right? You kind of mandated they make 100 calls a day, and the good ones would convert 10% into meetings or into opportunities for your salespeople, and so they would get 10 meetings a day if they could get to the 100 calls. The ones that couldn't do it, didn't have the aptitude, or didn't have the just drive, or it's tough, right? Didn't grind it out. They left. Um, the ones that were successful, you converted into your salespeople, right? They promoted after their 3 months of being a prospector, and then you hired another group, right? It's kind of like medieval warfare, right? You got your army together, you all charged the castle, and a lot of them didn't make it. The ones that came back became your top people, and they move forward. And I think that uh, it just ran its cycle. It's something that wasn't going to sustain itself over time. And there's, when we get into the present, there's a variety of reasons why. There's a couple things that you solve for when you switch, right? Um, First is once we became more social and you had things like Glassdoor, the ability to hire 30 to 50 people twice a year was going away because they knew that the 30 or 50 were not going to make it. You were going to keep about 10, right? Um, so you, and then the talent diluted because of that, because talented people were just not going to go there. They didn't want to be in that environment. Um, I think the other piece is that people started to see the value of teaching people to prospect and making that the foundation of their career, because once they became account managers, account executives, those tools served them well over time, right? And you can see a difference between salespeople that started off prospecting in their career and having success long term versus some that got lucky and got an account manager's role to start their career, right? So the prospecting thing, people begin to realize that that's a foundational skill set that you can teach people. I think, as you look through, the tools got a little more complicated. So it required better managers. It wasn't just all on the phone. It required better strategy, and it required a higher level person, right, to do the jobs.
So technology evolved, but also the role evolved, the complexity of the role.
Exactly. I think the roles. I was pretty surprised at Citrix the way I don't come from a strict prospecting background, but I found 5 managers that did, and they enlightened me. They all had superpowers that on one aspect of prospecting, and it was a pretty amazing education that my managers gave me over the last 3 years.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I assume we're going more to the present at this point. Obviously, back in the day, I don't want to call it a dial for dollars scenario, but it's a somewhat, right? I mean, it was
Yep.
more so that than it is this strategic skill that you can learn nowadays. But talk to me a little bit about what are these superpowers?
Yeah, we as we brought the team together, um, we had one manager that he's earlier in his career, but he was great at training um, the the calling. Right, he understood the ratios and the dial to demo, but he did it in a very sophisticated way. The 5 steps of cold calling, because fundamentally that's not going to go away. Right, that's always going to be a part of it. You're going to have to get on the phones. And then another manager within the group, she's probably she's recognized as one of the top 10 in the nation on LinkedIn, right? And social selling. And it's very tough when you have organizations that have historically been cold callers to kind of transition into social selling, because social selling takes a little bit to implement and get going, right? There's training, you have to build cadences, you have to build your presence, you have to do LinkedIn makeovers. There's a lot of pre work where calling, it's just here's your script, go call. Um, and then, one of our managers, she was long-term Citrix employee, but she was very good at digitizing all the training, right? So we could take all this training and get it delivered in a modern way and start giving them tools and sharing things virtually, across the tools that she could develop. She came from global enablement, and then the other two managers, they had the ability to grasp what the other three were doing and taking the skills they had learned over probably 10 years and incorporate them into the teams, right? And then the end result was this really modern selling methodology that allowed us to attract top level talent, right? Because we could sell the education we were going to give them on prospecting. Um, and when you breed talent with strategy and then kind of layered in with culture, we got amazing results. And now, if you look at Citrix, a lot of the young talent came from those managers and what they built and our ability to recruit the talent to come to Citrix either in Raleigh or Fort Lauderdale location.
Sounds like you almost have you've looked at digital sales and you've broken down your organization into maybe like different mediums or levels of expertise, like proficiency in the skill itself. So whether it be like social selling versus cold calling, those are, to your point, very different skills. But it sounds like you're actually staffing to have like specialists within that actual unique skill. Is that the case?
Yeah, and we came about this organically. Is the gentleman that handles the 5 steps of cold calling? He's also the one that onboards, because that's the easiest to teach, right? But we would give him the vision that, you know what, you're going to grind it out on the phone. That's where we start you. We want you to get your voice. But then we created a rotation program where once they completed that and they were able to hit the minimum requirements, then they went to the team that did social selling, but they took the skill set with them from the phones. And now we did the LinkedIn makeovers, the social selling, and they started to develop cadences that we could implement into our Salesforce. They started to understand how to track the results, and then we taught them the fundamentals of email marketing, right, from a salesperson's perspective. And then once they've accomplished that, then they would go to the next team, um, who understood both of those disciplines as well as email marketing, gave them more ownership. We actually allowed them to write their own cadences and write their own email templates and really run the team. And he was tenured enough to do that. And we had two, one in each location, that did that part of the business. But then they started mentoring each other and go back and train the other people on cold calling and modern selling, right? And at the end of 15 months, we have people that can basically build pipeline at any time. And since they're confident at it, they compartmentalize and spend big portions of their days. They're now all territory managers just building pipeline, because since they're good at it, it's fun, right? So the rotation thing, although it gets bumpy at times, because if you get somebody stuck in one of the rotations, right, as other people are moving forward, um, but when we have a lot of young early career people, but doing a different role and a different expertise every 3 months, and really getting them to that 15 months um, of tenure within a company is kind of key. Can you get them to 15 months without them losing their excitement and enthusiasm? If you're cold calling every day, no way it's going to happen. They're not cold calling for 15 months, right? They're going to want to move on to something else. But we get them to 15 months, and then they're ready to roll, right? They're ready to do other things.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it really does, especially when breaking it down into those three mediums. You got the email, the phone, and the social. You talked a little bit about the creativity that it might take to be able to, and the technical aptitude to craft some of these sequences. That's a really, it's like a best in class approach. Because I would agree, if you're mandating that the guys slam cold calls every day, all day for a year and a half, it's a recipe for high burnout and high churn. So
Yeah,
so
it's interesting on the cold calling piece. We actually have data around each of the steps, and we define each of the steps, and we trained it so well so that they knew where they missed, and so it's very intentional, right? You had to get through step one in order to get to step two, step three, and then finally actually get agreement with a customer to schedule a meeting, and they would know where they were lacking, and we could train them on that. But that was the really foundation of how do you monitor the success of your emails, like open rates, response rates, and then how do you um, uh, get the data on your success in social selling through LinkedIn. And we also do video, right? We use video tools where we send video links, about 45 to 60-second videos to customers that have great results as well. But they got used to tracking their own data. I think that first is our future is about every 18 months, we're going to have to rethink our businesses a little bit. Business cycles are so compact now that it just changes, right? I mean, and so when you look at the future, I think prospecting is going to be, instead of a place you start your career, it's going to be the career. One of the things I learned from, I expected when I was tasked to build the um, prospecting sales development team that my managers were going to be asking when they could go on to their next role. And the reality of it is they taught me that prospecting is a career, right? To be on that initial top of funnel is actually a place where people want to be their whole career. And I think that moving forward, what you're going to find is businesses are going to put a premium on it and start paying for it, right? Where some of your best paid managers are going to be the ones that really have the expertise on building pipeline, right? Have the expertise on the prospecting on all the different touch points in modern selling. And the other piece, I think that there are going to be salespeople that make the choice to make that their career as well. That they're not just going to do the 15 months, that they're going to be so good at that digital sales prospecting portion of their career. And when they look at the whole spectrum of things, work-life balance, predictability, everything you put into your career decisions, they're going to find that being in that, top of funnel role within a company is a place that you can be longer term, right? I mean, think about it. We're going to do artificial intelligence to break down data to find out who to call. But at the end of the day, everybody's going to have that information, right? Most of the automated stuff that's out there, everybody figures it out because it's automated. You have smart people, right? Online marketing, SEO, the first people, they did it better than others, but pretty soon everybody figured it out. The only variable in sales are the salespeople. That's the only way you can really compete and beat your competition, is to have a better sales team, because everything else, all the marketing people, the data people, all the behind the scenes people, they'll just figure out what you're doing and replicate that until it becomes an even playing field. And the only way you stay ahead is to have professionals in really all the positions. So I think having this transitional, disposable prospecting team, and it is really um, going to go away, and it's just going to be a profession that people do for 20 years. You already see it in companies that are built around prospecting, and my guess is that the ones that insource, where they take campaigns for companies like Citrix, they have people that all they want to do is prospect, but they have to go to third party because the big companies look at it as a short-term transitional entry-level position, and it's not. It probably never has been. We just didn't rethink it, right? We just did the same thing that we knew and was predictable, and we didn't think that people would do it for 10 years. But I think if you pay them well, there's benefits to being a prospector. So, um, you know, you can already see it in the management. Managers are becoming really, really good at building campaigns and social selling and monitoring the tools and getting people ramped quickly. They're already professional managers when it comes to prospecting. That's already here. And now we just have to find the reps that'll do it long term. And I think they're out there. We just haven't told them that it's an available career path.
That's a very cool take. I think you're going to hear a lot of SDRs who have listened to this perk up, and maybe they're going to reach out to you, Lee. I wouldn't be surprised, if you're going to offer them a higher salary. I think they'd be all over that. But I know personally several, I call them door openers. Just guys who are just really, really good at opening doors and initiating conversations and piquing people's interest. That is a very hard skill set. It's very difficult, and they have chosen it as a career path. So I think it's just a matter of time, to your point, that you start seeing more of the enterprise organizations and some of the larger companies out there who will eventually pay for big opening doors at big organizations, right, and doing it at a very high clip.
Yeah, and it's tough to do both, right? If you think about a prospector, their tone and pitch and voice is different than a closer. They tend to need to roll back and be a little less salesy and be a little more conversational with customers. Whereas salespeople, they don't roll back; they lean in and they challenge, right? And what you find in salespeople, there's that on-off switch is hard to do, right? And when you have the prospectors setting up meetings, now the salesperson doesn't have to. They don't have rollback in their mind, right? It's not what they've trained themselves to do. They are lean forward, challenge customers on the way that they're solving problems. That's not what prospectors do. Prospectors roll back. They're unintrusive. They're going to interrupt people and set up meetings, so their disposition has to be different. And I think we're figuring that out.
It's very cool, and that's coming from. And I know you're a closer by heart, Lee. So I mean that this take is from a true blue closer that
Yep.
you've got this take. So I think it speaks more volume. And so just to confirm, like you would imagine a future state of bifurcated roles, like truly bifurcated. I'm putting words in your mouth, but correct me if I'm wrong. You don't agree with the methodology that an account executive should be doing both prospecting as well as closing. You would ideally like those to be separated roles.
Yeah, current state, they have to do both because we don't have the infrastructure to support it. Um, but you see time and again when you split them, um, you get the results are there, right? You know, time and time again, it's just it becomes somehow it gets short term, and we almost have to when we rethink, we go back to what worked before, and it becomes new again, right? Until it becomes just the way that you run your business. But ideal state, I think, is the best way to run a sales organization, especially if you can financially get um, the tenured people that are professional prospectors with managers that that's their career and they study it. It's funny. I've been on forums with groups of managers, mostly entrepreneurial, and all they talk about is prospecting. I was like, I didn't even realize this was out here, right? They have like roundtable of That like CIOs began picking up the phone in 2020 because work from home got them isolated a little bit, and they didn't have meetings for people to give them information. And these young entrepreneurs that were trying to get into companies, they're like, yeah, our people figured out it's time to start calling again, because people that never picked up the phone picked up the phone, but they only did it for 3 months. And then they were back to their old thing again. But if you're not good, and you're not thoughtful, and you're not doing the research, and not just the research, what you're reading, but also talking to everybody else doing the same thing. um, I learned a lot from just the forums. Right, it's pretty crazy the thoughtfulness that some of these prospecting professionals are coming up with. Um, so they're going to make it a career. They're just become so valuable that companies are going to be. We can't lose at top of funnel, because if we do, then we're going to lose at close one ops. I think that a lot of learning over the last 3 years. You have universities now that have degrees in professional sales. They have fraternal organizations that have sales competitions. You have forums now around professional sales, and you see the profession is now at a level that, um, from a respect set standpoint, um, the amount of expertise and learning and skill set that you have to study and develop is equal to, lawyer and CPA, right? It used to be you had to have aptitude to do it, and if you did, then you could be in the financially in that realm. Now you got to have a little aptitude and drive, but you also have to educate yourself, because there's so much great information out there, and people that are continually learning of how do we solve problems for customers, um, and and have a sophisticated way to do it efficiently and effectively, right? And so it's nice to see, having sold my whole life, that it's evolved from seat of the pants aptitude to very thoughtful, very professional. It's in the universities. There's some really cool literature out there now in forums, and I think there's more to come.